Welcome to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with David Thomas. David, please let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Dave Thomas. I live in Socorro, New Mexico. I'm president of a skeptics group based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, called New Mexicans for Science and Reason. We've got a fun little website, nmsr.org, O-R-G. And down here in Socorro, I work at a earthquake instrument center, helping people, scientists borrow seismometers for their big experiments. But I have a night job teaching a fun class called Science and Pseudoscience, Psychology 1180. And in that class, we look at all sorts of conspiracy theories, the 9/11 truth conspiracies. We look at COVID conspiracies and 5G and ivermectin and all of that. And we look at creationism, intelligent design, the flat earth movement. I have a lecture on the flat earthers, and UFOs. So we're coming up on the 75th anniversary of the Roswell Incident. And just yesterday we did our class on the great UFOs of New Mexico. We've got Roswell, we've got the Aztec flying saucer, we've got the Socorro Incident right here in town, and then the Dulce underground bases. And so New Mexico is a hotbed of paranormal activity, if you could call it that.
Now, do you believe in that stuff? Like, I understand, like, from the Skeptic Mag, I'm starting to realize that a lot of these people are here to debunk what they would call these conspiracy theories, which probably you get a lot of flack from the UFO community, or UAP community is what they want to be called now. I'm just curious to what your thoughts are on, especially even with the Roswell incident as well, too, because I know you've written a paper about it as well.
Yeah. So my big thought is, it's a huge universe, billions of galaxies, billions of stars in each one. And I think it's presumptuous for us to think that we're it, that we're the only life form in the universe. So I'm hopeful that there are other life forms, intelligent life forms. That's a whole nother hoop. Here we've had evolution here on Earth for billions of years, and animal evolution for 540 million years. And yet the evolution of an intelligence, able to manipulate the environment, to see the big picture, to invent vaccines and whatnot, that's a relatively recent development. So from the very limited view of the universe that we have, intelligence looks pretty special. But that said, I don't think that alien visitors have been landing on Earth and kidnapping our citizens and mutilating our cows and doing all these activities. I'm ready to be convinced. If you can, show me that alien spaceship or a vial of blood with the alien genome, that would go a long way toward establishing that something that amazing has happened. But as I showed my class earlier this week, space is huge, and the energy requirements to take a mothership, say about the size of one of our cruise liners that you cruise around the South Pacific on, thousands of cabins, a galley, captain's quarters, all that, able to take thousands of people. So if you took that kind of size ship, about a cruise liner sized ship, to accelerate that to let's say half the speed of light, and then you could coast for a long time. You could decelerate, put the brakes on, land somewhere, probe some aliens, um, kidnap some cows, whatever. Then you have to gas up, accelerate to come back, and then put the brakes on. So there's 4 episodes of acceleration, deceleration, and you add all those up and look at different scenarios. Like, do you have to take your fuel with you, which makes it much more expensive? Or I've also considered, let's say you have a ramjet and you're scooping up hydrogen from interstellar space and compressing it to undergo fusion and getting your power that way. And even with those kinds of options, when you look at um, all the considerations, it would take so many hundreds or even thousands of times more than all the energy humanity has used since the Industrial Revolution began. Thousands of times our total earthly output for hundreds of years, just to take one decent-sized mothership and accelerate it to a considerable fraction of the speed of light, say half.
Well, that disables my theory that it could be government tech. I was more in the belief that like it probably wasn't aliens. It might have been like some government tech we haven't seen. But now I'm also in the belief that could be a weather phenomenon. I'm not like a hardcore like it's this or that. I'm more open-minded. I think everyone's got their own kind of. I think you start to realize, especially talking with people who are into conspiracy theories, whether it's 9/11, whether it's flat Earth, whether it's this, from what I've learned, it's just a lot of like there's a line where I draw it, and I would say is when it starts to get violent. Like I don't think when it starts to get violent, that's a no. I don't like that. I'm more of like if you want to talk about like, oh, because of this and because of that. I like the back and forth banter with it, the conversation style with it. A lot of it it's a lot of like for them I feel like a lot it's being shut down, mostly because if someone says the earth is flat and you're like, well, no, it's this because of this, because of this, it's because of this. A lot of that are like, I don't care about that stuff. I'm going to go with the information I have, in a sense of like I'm tired of being felt like they're lesser or maybe talked down to in a sense. But when it comes to the UFO topic, a lot of what I've noticed with it, especially because I mean, what I want to get to is the Roswell incident. Like I only know from what I've heard in stories because I wasn't alive when it happened. But I mean, that's usually what their main focus point is. They bring it back to that. They'll bring it to Bob Lazar. They'll bring it to whatever. They'll keep naming off names. And sometimes those names don't even have identification behind it. They'll be like, I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. And then it's like, oh, well, where's the evidence, though, is the thing. And it's like, well, we don't have it. It's like they'll do anything to avoid that, I would say. Um, but it's just so it's it's hard because we haven't seen anything like that before. Now, I'm more in belief that there's definitely life out there in the universe. Do I believe it contacted here? No. I think if anything, it's something else going on. Maybe even a weather phenomena. Ball lightning, for instance, is one that I can believe a little bit more. Um, but for a lot of people, they said they experience things, and that gets even harder because we don't know what they've experienced or they don't know what this is. And I think it's an interesting topic, but there's a lot more infighting than I see with it than I actually see promotion of like an actual wanting to know what else is out there, which I think is, we should have eyes and ears open to what's out there as well, too. But I don't know a lot. What are your thoughts?
So I'm sort of a show me kind of skeptic. If somebody comes up and claims that they have extra sensory perception, my first instinct is not to mock them and say, "Oh, that's impossible. Everyone knows that's impossible." Rather, I say, "Oh, wow, ESP, I've got an experiment. Let's stand back and let's try science." And actually, in my class, I show them how to design. If ESP was real, here's the kind of rigorous scientific test that you could do that would prove it if it was real, and you'd have a signal to measure. So, as far as the UFOs, if somebody has seen something strange, I'm interested in that. I'm not gonna just tell them, right off the bat, well, it's not aliens. I'd have to hear, what they saw first. But the skeptics have a sort of saying, extraordinary claims require
For sure.
extraordinary evidence, and And an example of that, here in the Southwest, we have lots of ranchers and lots of barns and cattle and horses. So if a rancher came up to me and said, "Dave, I got a horse in my barn," I'd probably say, "Clem, you're a good man. I believe you." And I'd go along my day, the rest of my day. But if Clem came up and said, "Dave, got me a unicorn in my barn," I'd say, "Clem, you want to grab my camera? Let's go." And I'd check it out. That's sort of my attitude.
But when it comes to the Roswell incident, for instance, I want to get to your work on that, for instance. That seems like a harder topic, especially from where you're located as well, too, because I know that's kind of like it's like near the Loch Ness. Everyone kind of promotes the idea, oh, it's a Loch Ness monster. It's kind of like a selling point for a place as well, too. I feel
Oh
like
yeah,
that's with Roswell, New Mexico as well. It's kind of a selling point. I mean, I know like they had a McDonald's that was in the shape of a UFO. I mean, that's a selling point. It's an advertising standpoint. Maybe
it
that's
is.
all it is.
Some towns have a potato festival, and Roswell's got a UFO festival, and I can't fault them for using that as a mechanism to generate some capital. Their big UFO festival, I think it peaked in the 90s. They had 50,000 attending. But I'm not able to get the figures recently because I think they're too low for the town to want to release. So, but my angle on the Roswell incident is that I went to school here at New Mexico Tech in Socorro, and the chairman of the physics department for a long time was Charlie Moore. He was an atmospheric physicist. He died about 10 years ago. And when he was a grad student in 1947, he was at New York University, and they put him on this secret project that the Army Air Force was working on called Project Mogul. And his job was to get balloons up in the atmosphere to stay at a constant altitude, which is really a hard physics problem because balloons have gas, and when they rise up to a lower pressure, atmospheric pressure, they expand, and that makes them go upwards more. So getting a balloon to stay at a constant level is really tricky. So that's what Charlie Moore was working on. But the reason for that is that they this was 1947. We World War II had ended just 2 years earlier with our dropping of two atomic bombs on Japan, and World War II started with a sneak attack, Pearl Harbor. We were not expecting that, and so in 1947, the United States was deathly afraid of another sneak attack, this time from our former allies, the Russians, who we knew they had spies in Los Alamos, and we knew they were working on their own atomic bomb. So we were pretty desperate to have intelligence on the Soviet atomic bomb development. So a scientist named Athelstan Spilhaus, pretty famous scientist at New York University, he had a weekly column, sort of a science, wonders of science in the Sunday Funnies. And presidents said, I learned science from your column. I think Truman said that. But Spilhaus looked at history and how can we detect these Soviet nuclear tests. And he came across Krakatoa. So Krakatoa was a volcano that blew up in 1883 in Indonesia, and just a huge explosion, big tsunami, killed tens of thousands of people. But the explosion was so loud that it could be heard for thousands of kilometers. It's like all over that Indonesian region. And so Spilhaus was able to look at the timing and calculate, because we know from the speed of sound what temperature the air that sound wave is propagating in, and the pressure and other things. And so Spilhaus figured out, wow, that the sound waves from that volcano we're in a really cold air zone, which occurs about 50,000 feet up. It's called the tropopause. It's sort of between the troposphere, where we have our normal weather, and the stratosphere, which is where planes like to fly,
Yeah.
and more clouds. And so if you get a big sound wave, like a volcanic explosion or an atomic explosion, the sound waves will stay in that layer, and they'll sort of propagate around the Earth. And so his idea was to get microphones, not just one microphone, but like three differently spaced microphones, so that as the wave swept by them, they could trigger, 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 and you could triangulate where this sound came from. So it was a kind of primitive method to estimate where are the Soviets testing their nuclear weapons. And it so in the summer of 1947, they tried some flights from New Jersey, and the wind just blew them away. It was not practical, so they moved the whole thing down to Alamogordo, New Mexico, and launched several flights from there. And on one of the first test flights, which was number 4, I believe, they tracked it. And an important detail regarding these mogul flights was that at this time, World War II, wars were a lot more in your face back then, and there was rationing, and mom and pop companies built things to help the war effort. And so you had this little toy company in Manhattan called Merrick Manufacturing that made the radar reflectors that the Army Air Force used for these balloon flights. And so they needed some for this project, which was called Project Mogul. And the purpose of the project to spy on Soviet atomic tests, that was top secret at the time. But the physics of like getting a balloon to fly at constant level, that was public, and Charlie Moore even published on that in the Journal of Meteorology. So they had this basically, and I've got a picture of the balloon trains.
I remember
I
the
could,
picture from the magazine that they showed. It just seemed like something that was a little bit different. But I was wondering, so that headline in the newspaper in the article way back then, that was more of a like kind of like a clickbait, I would say, for back then. It was like something just to get people to buy the magazine, not really a truth type thing.
I think that was more of Major Marcel's misconception. So let me describe how it happened. So in June, um, they were sending up these 600-foot tall balloon trains for the secret Project Mogul, and they had radar reflectors, and the reflectors were flimsy. They were kind of collapsing, and so they asked this mom and pop toy company in Manhattan, make these reflectors stronger. And so they had some tape that they applied to the radar reflectors, and that tape had weird symbols on it that everyone describes as, it's not writing, it's not letters, it kind of looks like hieroglyphics. And so Charlie Moore, when he was launching these 600-foot tall balloon monsters, he would think to himself, wonder why we're dolling up our radar reflectors like this. And away they went. And so the flight number 4, I think it was launched in early June. They tracked it as far as they could, and then the winds just blew it away, and they lost it at a town not too far from Roswell. And what we think happened after that was the balloon, once it got to a super high altitude, and the little weather, they had 24 weather balloons. Once enough of them popped, it sank down to earth and started to drag along the ground near the Brazel ranch that he was working at, the rancher Mac Brazel. So as the balloons dragged their radar reflectors and parachutes, they would get pieces of them torn up. The whole assembly would get lighter. It would lift up. It would go a few more yards, more pieces would get torn off. And so this basically this 600-foot tall balloon disassembled itself by having itself pulled to bits as it landed on the New Mexico desert. And that created this really weird scene where you've got hundreds of yards of this shiny metallic fabric everywhere. Looks like the weirdest kind of crash you could imagine. And the poor rancher walked into that, and he had been primed by another key event. So in the summer of 1947, there wasn't just this balloon experiment down in Alamogordo that got lost. A fellow named Kenneth Arnold, a pilot up in near Yakima, Washington, he was flying along and he thought he saw some lights, some weird lights in the sky, and he described their motion as they were skipping like saucers, like you might take a saucer and
Yeah.
skip it on a lake. So he was trying to describe that undulating motion, and that's where we got flying saucers.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and but back then they started to call them flying discs, and that was the viral story of the summer of 1947. If you go back to newspapers, every newspaper every day had more flying discs reported, Minnesota, Missouri, and there was a $3,000 reward for if you can find one of these flying discs, $3,000 for you. And it was in that atmosphere that the rancher was out, just tending his ranch, and came across this incredibly weird debris field with all this sort of torn up metallic paper and balloon bits. And so we gathered some up in a bundle. It was probably a couple feet long. It weighed a few pounds, 5 or 10 pounds, all the stuff he gathered up. And he took that to the sheriff in Roswell. And the sheriff said, "Wow, I don't know what the heck this is. Why don't you take it to the Army Air Force?" And so he did. And they called Major Marcel, who was the one of the intelligence officers at Roswell, and he came in and said, "Let's go to the scene." So Marcel and Razzle went out to the site and gathered some more of that material, and then they came back. And in the middle of the night, on his way back to Roswell, Marcel stopped at home and showed his family, his little son especially, this amazing weird material they had collected out on the desert. And there were sticks, and the sticks had alien writing on them. And his son, remembered that years later. He said, "Oh yeah, I remember when Daddy came in and showed me the alien writing, and here's a picture of what I remember." So at any rate, Marcel, got back to the base, and based on the writing, he said, "We have a flying disc." And so it was Marcel who called the press office and said, "Hey, press release, Roswell Army Air Force has collected a flying disc, the viral story of the summer. We got one." And of course that went viral, and it went on the wires, and all the radio stations were calling
How come there was no
Roswell.
like clarification on the idea of it being a weather balloon compared to it being like alien tech or something like that? Because it seems like a huge mismanaged or maybe a possible opportunity. Like I'm always like kind of skeptical with the government. But I mean, you would think that you would want to clarify, like, hey, everyone, this is what it was. It wasn't this. But it seems like with all these headlines, I mean, I can get why someone would want to disable misinformation, because that would lead society when we start looking back on everything. Everything's all jumbled up. You don't know what to believe. But it seems like they missed a major opportunity to try and educate people on the fact that this isn't what this is, because the Roswell incident, besides some Bob Lazar, whatever you want to say, UFO experience or incidents, are the biggest, strongest points that they have. And it's so far back, it's very, very hard to try and dig up as much information as you possibly can from just an average person with their cell phone today.
So yeah, there's 2 points. One is, um, and no, it just had a derail of my train of thought. But um,
Welcome to Out of the Blank podcast.
yeah, out of the blue. So so we were talking about Major Marcel, and basically, um, I think it was the alien writing that convinced him this was the real thing. And then, so when it went worldwide over in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, General Ramey said, "What the heck is all this? I want that stuff on my desk today, and bring Major Marcel too." And so on July 8th, 1947, they flew Marcel out to Fort Worth, to where General Ramey was, and they brought the debris, spread it out on the floor, had some photographers, and that's when they made the announcement that it was a weather balloon. But two things I remembered what I was going to say. One is the Project Mogul was no ordinary weather balloon. A weather balloon, is like a single thing. It might have a little gadget at the bottom. Project Mogul it was 600 feet tall. It had 24 different weather balloons. It had 3 parachutes. It had 3 radar reflectors. It had strings, wires. It was a pretty complex gadget. So, accusing people of saying it's just a weather balloon, it was no simple weather balloon. And the other point, germane to what you were saying, is the Air Force did try to explain it. And in fact, in the papers on, I believe, July 10th, they showed a picture of the airmen at Alamogordo launching one of their radar reflectors, and they tried to say, yeah, what they found at Roswell was kind of like the stuff we're launching. What they did not mention was the top secret Project Mogul, or looking for Soviet atomic tests. So the whole thing sort of boils down to this dramatic moment in General Ramey's office when so he called his weather officer, because weather equipment, weather balloons, you get a weather officer who knows weather equipment. So he called the weather officer, who was named Irving Newton, and they called Irving Newton and said, "General wants you to get down there right away." And Irving Newton said, "Well, I'm on duty. I can't just leave my station." And he was told, General says get down there. You get down there, soldier, now. And so he went down. He was really excited to see a flying disc. And he walks into the room and looks around and says, well, that's like a Ray Win radar reflector. He recognized the radar reflector right off. And so then they photographed Marcel, and everybody had turns taking photographs. And they basically made Marcel, or they had him pose with the stuff, which he was happy to do. And the thing for me that kind of sinks the whole Roswell incident and convinces me, yep, it was a government project that was misidentified as a flying disc, is that you have all this stuff on the floor, and Marcel is going to the weatherman, Irving Newton, pointing to the radar reflector that's torn up on the floor, saying, "Look at the alien writing. Don't you agree with me that this is alien writing?" And basically, the entire UFO community says that the pictures that we have, that's all of a crummy, radar balloon thing they had in a back room. They brought that out. They said that was the real thing. The real debris was whisked off to right field. It's not what's in the pictures in General Ramey's office. That was a hoax. And that's pretty much the UFO community's answer. So I've got a great little movie clip from the Roswell movie, about a 3-minute clip that basically sets this up, and it shows how Marcel is being humiliated. Can I show that clip?
Yeah. How do you want me to let you have
If you can screen share me,
yeah.
then I can call it up.
Um,
Okay, I'm not there yet.
all participants can share.
Okay, I'm in. Okay.
Yeah, because it seemed like it's like one of those storytelling effects where you start passing a story farther and farther down the line, and you start seeing.
Okay, I got this from yesterday's class.
I'm your student on your off day.
There you go.
You might have to hit share with sound.
I did. I hit the sound. So
Sound up.
Here we
There
go.
we go.
They want to see you in Fort Worth.
Me?
Yeah.
Major Marcel. Colonel DeVos. Welcome to Fort Worth. General Ramey's waiting.
Thank you.
Real stuff. The real debris. They're taking at the right
Right now! Gotta get these boxes unloaded, and I mean right now. Let's move it.
I'd say it was right about here. Sir, there's an access road that comes in from the east that, well, not on this map. It's pretty bad. I can't imagine it would be. There's a windmill about 100 yards south of the large gouge where the object must have hit. There's debris scattered everywhere. I've never seen anything like it. Sir.
Major, we have some reporters coming. We'll show them the debris that the rancher found. You will keep your mouth shut, and I will field all questions. Is that understood?
Yes, sir. Get the reporters. I don't understand. What's this?
This is what you found.
No. Sir, this is, well, this is a weather balloon. I mean, yeah. This is the part that hangs down that reflects the radar. I mean, this is ordinary foil. It's tin foil. We send these up every day.
Well, that may be true, Major, but the fact is, this is what you found. And from now on, you're not to talk to anyone about this. That includes your family. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is Warrant Officer Irving Newton, the weather officer at Fort Worth. Now, tell us, what's your opinion?
It's a weather balloon. I guess what made this one here so confusing is that it has this radar target attached. Quite frankly, I'm a bit surprised that someone with Major Marcel's experience didn't recognize it for what it was.
Major Marcel, would you hold this for the reporters, please? In fact, if you would kneel down, I think they could get everything into the same picture. Thank you.
So this is where the idea came from.
This just in. What goes up must come down. Bad news, folks. Seems our flying saucer is more like an empty teacup. According to General Ramey, Major Marcel should have realized that what the rancher had found was, in fact, nothing but a weather balloon. Talk about having confidence in your army. And here I was planning on inviting the Martians on this show so we could hear their side.
Wow. Uh-oh.
The small...
There we go.
They So would you say that was so? Is that like the origin of kind of like you think where a lot of these people started thinking that maybe that they're not showing you the real thing? Because like I said, I have my skepticisms about the government. I don't think they give everything to you, and then why would they give everything to you? But
Can I show you one more thing? Let me pull it up here and get it ready.
we just got to be careful because with YouTube you get copyright strikes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any more movie clips.
Because like what, like, let's say like you're if you're talking to someone who believes in this incident and believes that it was a cover up and believes that they really have alien tech somewhere, like maybe stuff that leads kind of into the Bob Lazar thing. What is your biggest criticisms that you face when talking about something like this?
Well, the true believers have their reasons to think that the government is covering up the cosmic Watergate, as it's called. Um, so I would like to show you some pictures
Sure.
of that stuff. Here I go. Here we go. Can I share again?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay. And switch over to PowerPoint. Okay, so here's these pictures that J. Bond Johnson took for the Dallas Morning Star Telegram. That's General Ramey. That's Major Marcel, and being humiliated with. That's definitely a Project Mogul kind of radar target. There's the weather guy, Irving Newton, posing, and there is General Ramey with Colonel DuBose, who is mentioned by the Bob Lazar types. Colonel DuBose was in on it, in on the big cover up. So, and these photos, this is the Roswell incident, but these are clearly not a spaceship. But they do show material that is entirely consistent with your Project Mogul balloon train. So the UFO believers are pretty much united in saying that these pictures are a hoax, like they showed in that movie clip that I showed you. And so this is the weather guy, and this is his official Air Force affidavit. And this is what I think kind of settles the Roswell incident.
He said, while I was examining the debris, Major Marcel was picking up pieces of the target sticks and trying to convince me that some notions on the sticks were alien writings. They were figures on the sticks, lavender or pink in color, appeared to be weather-faded markings with no rhyme or reason. He did not convince me there were alien writings.
So it was the hieroglyphics that convinced Marcel it was a flying disc, not from Earth. And he always believed that. He never thought it was from Earth. So I showed you the clip, but so here's the movie where they've got the obviously bogus radar reflector. Here's the real thing, weather guy. So my question to all the UFO promoters is why is your guy Marcel pointing to this piece of crummy tin foil he was humiliated to pose with? Why is he trying to convince this man who humiliated him publicly that this crummy tin foil has alien writing? It doesn't add up. And to me, the sensible story is this is the Roswell incident. This is the debris that Mac Brazel found on his ranch, and it wasn't an alien spaceship. Marcel, I've got another fun little film clip where they asked Major Marcel, well, you've seen stuff at White Sands. Was it a rocket, an airplane? And Marcel says, no, it was not an airplane or a rocket, but it was not from this Earth. So there you have it. Okay.
To me, it's one of the ones that always gets referenced to, and my only thoughts now is that with a town that basically popularizes their location on the basis of this incident and the basis of a UFO crash, there's more plausibility, or there's more kind of belief in wanting to deny the fact that it was exposed to be a weather balloon, more of the fact that it came from somewhere else and it actually was a spaceship and the government's hiding it up, which explains why a lot of people really are refusing to hear maybe clear evidence or information, especially with a film clip as well too. People just would say, oh, that's Hollywood, or that's not what actually happened. That's what they want you to believe. And that's when it starts to get a little bit more like, well, now you're sounding kind of like the one that's wrong in a sense, because you don't have any evidence to show that it was a cover up. All you have is a film, for instance. I'm more in belief with you when I say that when it comes to the Roswell incident, it obviously probably was a weather balloon. I think it was a hoax or it was whatever it was. I don't think it was an alien thing that landed. But a town that bases their whole popularity and their whole name now off of that incident, I would say it's going to be very, very hard for them to want to even say, oh, yeah, it was a hoax. It was a weather balloon.
It is. Now, the UFO Museum does have a small exhibit that says, well, here's the mogul explanation. And it's more lip service than anything, but they do acknowledge it. So I'm not sure if that's still down there. I haven't been to the museum for a few years.
That's the thing, is that how many people go to that museum compared to how many people go to the McDonald's that's in the shape of a UFO. See, they're not going to tell you, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, we live in Roswell, the famous, crash landing of one of those flying saucers. Just saying, that's more popular to build up money for your town rather than it is for.
I'm not going to fault Roswell for trying to capitalize.
I'm not
on
either. I'm just saying that's the
some
biggest.
Towns have a potato festival.
Yeah.
Some towns have a armadillo festival. You got to go with what you got.
Yeah, and I think it's a great money option is what I'm saying. That's what I think it's been in my mind. Like I was saying in the beginning, that's what I think it is now. It's not really an actual thing of like a saucer landed here. There's this type of thing going on. It's more of like a publicity stunt to get more attention for your town, which I'm not mad at.
There's sort of parallels with our other New Mexico cities. So Aztec, they have their own UFO fable. Some swindlers were swindling people with these devices called doodle bugs that they alleged could find gold and oil. And then they came up with the idea, what if we told our marks that these doodle bugs were alien technology? So they started to, do that. And so these two swindlers convinced a Hollywood gossip columnist named Frank Scully to write a novel describing how these scientists gave a talk in Denver that revealed all these secret details of this alien craft that was recovered in Aztec, New Mexico, and it was 99.99 feet wide exactly, and it had 16 dead aliens, and we learned all sorts of advanced alien technology, and so the Hollywood Reporter, Scully, that book, and it was like a bestseller. It was our first sort of flying saucer novelette, Attack of the Flying Saucers, and then and pretty much it was a story made up by the con men, and so a reporter for True Magazine named J.P. Kahn got really interested in it, and he dug into it and found, that they were swindlers. He found their victims that they had swindled, and he wrote the whole thing up in True Magazine and a couple of dynamite multi-page exposés where he described things like the swindlers said they had a piece of the alien spaceship, and so J.P. Kahn, the reporter, asked to look at it, and he did a magic trick and gave them another piece of metal in return, and took the debris from the Venusian spaceship at Aztec, took it to Stanford Research, had them analyze it, and it turned out to be pots and pans aluminum. But the main part was, he found the victims, and that led to a court trial, and there's a Denver Post headline: saucer scientists convicted in $50,000 fraud. And so an Aztec decided, let's do a Roswell and let's have our own festival. So the Aztec Library organized it, late 90s. And in fact, I gave a couple talks at some of the first celebrations they had of their Aztec UFO. And I showed them, hey, J.P. Kahn kind of figured it out for you. Here it is. But it sort of degenerated into just this sort of new age. The mothership was here, and if you can't see the mothership, what's wrong with you? And it just really descended into a sort of, you might think you were in Sedona, Arizona, instead of Aztec, New Mexico. So after 14 years, the library said, you know, this isn't brightening our town the way we envisioned. We're calling it quits. So they canceled their Roswell or Aztec Festival. And then the other big one here is where I live, Socorro, New Mexico. We've got the Socorro Incident, where a policeman saw something really unusual south of town, and there was actual physical evidence. There was some prints of perhaps an alien craft and burned bushes from jets going off. So and that attracted J. Allen Hynek himself to check it out for Project Blue Book, and there's lots of explanations. We really don't have a super good explanation of that. It could have been a student prank, and the president of our university at the time wrote a letter to Nobel laureate Linus Pauling and said, "Yeah, I've heard that it was a student prank and that the student has left." But I since talked to him, Sterling Colgate, about that before he died a few years ago, and he couldn't remember who the student was or even the details of the prank. It was just too far back in 1964. So, but another colleague, Duke Gildenberg, who worked down he did a lot of the big balloon flights, the really large gas balloons, the skyhooks they were called. And Duke looked around the records of White Sands for April 24th, 1964, the day that policeman Lonnie Zamora saw this really weird thing south of town. And it turns out the White Sands Missile Range was testing the Lunar Surveyor, which designed for the moon and its 6 times weaker gravity could not fly all by itself on Earth. So they had a little test helicopter, a Bell helicopter, that supported it. So you've got this really weird helicopter carrying a lunar surveyor that can hold 2 astronauts in spacesuits. And if that is what Lonnie Zamora saw, then I think, well, that could explain the whole thing there. So that's one explanation. Another explanation, students have emailed me, former students, saying, yeah, we did it. There was a dynamite shack out there, and there was still some dynamite. We were lighting sticks of dynamite under these 55-gallon drums and propelling them, 100 feet into the air, and it was all great fun until that cop stopped, and then we took off. And they, might have been dressed in white overalls to handle the dynamite. So there's lots of interesting explanations. Of course, one of them is aliens from outer space made that huge trip through the vastness of the galaxy to visit us and then fly away without making contact. But that's an interesting one. So the point I was trying to get to was that some people think that the policeman cooked it up with the mayor to make Socorro famous, to put Socorro on the map, and I really don't buy that. I think the policeman Lonnie Zamora was sincere. I think he saw something really weird that freaked him out. I think it's possible it could have been a space experiment from White Sands. Maybe it was students blowing up dynamite. I'm not convinced it was aliens from space. But the important thing is it never went anywhere. Socorro doesn't have the Lonnie Zamora Museum. We've got a mural south of town with Lonnie's picture on it. That's about it. We don't have a major museum. The mayor never tried to capitalize on it. So I really, discount the explanation that it was a Socorro hoax.
Just from your thoughts, why would you, or why are you so, I guess, let's say, interested in trying to, I wouldn't say combat, but battle people in the UAP or UFO community? Because I'm like, that just seems exhausting after a while. It just seems like you're just fighting against a wall or something like that. But I mean, you've proudly spoke and you've kind of been, talked about like, this is why it's not that and this and this. Are you looking at it from a local aspect, like just the area that you live? You're kind of like looking at it like it's, people don't know, or are you?
It's just um, there are so many explanations going out there, and many of them are wrong. And I think if scientists don't try to explain, here's what really happened with all these mysterious events. There are mysterious events, but most of them have pretty good explanations. So if scientists don't explain those, if we just say, "Oh, we're above that. I'm not going to talk about conspiracy theories," then what the public is going to hear is unsolved mysteries. Look at Socorro. Look at Roswell, and they're going to hear this stream of true believer claims. And if they're never countered, then why not believe it? So I think it's important for scientists to try to communicate to the public. They're fascinating mysteries. They have fascinating solutions, and we need to convey some of that excitement. I mean, we live in an exciting universe right now. We're in a solar system that has a planet, Mars, that is populated entirely by robots. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, the rover.
Yeah.
What do you think about the idea, like Bill Nelson coming out to the public and saying that there's things that they can't identify and they want to do a whole space program that studies in extraterrestrials or UFOs?
So there was a new report that came out this summer, and it was the UFO community tried to make it sound like a huge thing, but if you actually look at the details of the report, basically it says, well, there are many explanations that could explain these things. And my colleague Mick West, I hear you talked to him recently.
Yeah.
But
Great guy.
He's talked to our group a couple times, once in person. We flew him out here, and most recently on Zoom. But he has really delved into the UAP stuff and the FLIR and the Go Fast and the gimbal videos, and has found, for the most part, that they have prosaic explanations. Gonna turn off my alarm there.
That's an
There we go.
alien ringtone. Now I don't trust you now.
Uh-oh.
I just find it skeptical because I started looking at Bill Nelson coming out and saying that he wants to look for our origins on Mars. When there's a video of him saying that, the main NASA director saying that, where I'm like, I don't understand the game here. They haven't talked about it any time until now. Like I said, I don't have a side, whether it is, whether it's not. I'm going to sleep the same either way. I find it fascinating because, like I said, I not distrust the government, but I'm skeptical with them. And that would be the concept of, why are they now talking about the idea that our origins on Mars, when that was conspiracy theory that we might have came from Mars or something like that. Like, it just seems very, very odd to me, where I wonder if is it a push for funding? Is it a push of belief in the government or belief in something else out there? Keep your mind off the politics. I have no clue. I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
So I haven't really seen directly too much of Bill Nelson's stuff there, but one of the proponents that life on Earth was started on Mars is Richard Hoagland, and the Enterprise mission and the face on Mars, and he contends that this hill on Mars, this little knobby mesa, that kind of looked like a face in an early Viking photo, really is a face. It's a mile wide, and our Martian ancestors are trying to communicate to us, and they've got this tetrahedral geometry that they're trying to communicate with us. And the thing that gets me about that is, NASA, back in the moonshot, it had a big budget, but as soon as we went to the moon a few times, we beat the Russians. That was it. They pulled the plug on that huge investment. And so if NASA had any inkling, if we could take high-res pictures that showed the face on Mars really was a sculptured human image, they would do it. I mean, in a heartbeat. NASA would say, yeah, look what we got on Mars. Send money and we'll go check it out for you. So as far as the face on Mars things, if there really was some evidence of life there, I think NASA would show it to us to encourage us to send them out there to learn more. So I think we're doing interesting things with our probes. I think it's super interesting to look for life on Europa in the liquid oceans underneath the ice. That sounds like a super fascinating project. Checking Mars for signs of past life, because it's always been on the small side and really too small to sustain an atmosphere. So I'm kind of skeptical that we'll find life, but it's worth looking for.
Yeah, I just it's definitely, I mean, it's something that I think you should be interested in for sure. It's just when I hear these statements from see, I'm trying to find the video right now. When Bill Nelson is talking about looking for our origins possibly coming from Mars. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that, I mean, I think everyone had their mind on the pandemic for so long that all this release of everything kind of really was just like under the radar in a sense. I mean, they talked about it earlier and no one really cared because we were like in the midst of I guess I would say peak COVID. And then now they're starting to talk about it again and you're getting a lot of people interested, where a lot of people are wondering what the hell is going on. There's more phone videos I'm seeing every single day, and a lot, obviously those can be manipulated, but it's just it's definitely like I'm curious to what the major goal of them, besides pushing for funding, I would say. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Huh. Well, I'd have to see what he's saying to really comment on it.
See if I can find it.
I've got a sort of germane picture, if I can share screen for a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Some pictures I took here in Socorro that relate to the whole phenomenon. Is that okay?
Yeah, you should be able to share screen still.
Okay, let me, I don't need sound for this one. And we'll go right here, yeah. Oh, that was not the one I wanted. I was right on top of it and lost the whole thing. Okay, here we go. That one. And current. So this is a XKCD cartoon. He's a sort of a younger cartoonist. And this one a few years ago, 1980 through 2013, time and the vertical axis percentage of the population carrying cameras everywhere they go, every waking moment of their lives. In the last few years, with very little fanfare, we've conclusively settled the questions of flying saucers, lake monsters, ghosts, and Bigfoot. And so then back in 2014, a friend of mine, Kathy Richardson, found this weird cloud above the church in Socorro, and she put it on Facebook. And when I saw that, I said, well, that's funny, because when I was riding my bike to work that day, I saw a weird cloud, and I took its picture, and I put it on Facebook. So then I had the two of them, and I showed these to my students to say, see, even a kind of mildly interesting cloud can get multiple pictures. So where are the pictures of Bigfoot or the mothership? And after a couple of semesters, one of the students said, I remember that cloud. And he gave me his picture. So we got 3 pictures of this kind of mildly interesting cloud that happened in Socorro. So my point there is if people, think they see videos or UFOs, and they're taking videos of it, get your friends to corroborate it. But many of these videos are things that are too close. If people don't understand how cameras work sometimes, and a fly flying close to a camera out of focus can look like a ship that's 20 kilometers away. So I think, in the long run, you just have to look at all the evidence for these things that are being claimed.
So I'm gonna share screen this with you. I think I
Okay.
found it. Should pop up. Do you see what I'm seeing? Is it share now? I'm seeing my.
Yeah, I
Okay.
got you.
You see You see Bill Nelson, right?
I see Bob Pliskin, Esquire. Yeah, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson.
Hold on. It's going to scroll right back up. This one right here, the video with Bill Nelson that my cursor's on.
Okay, 22 seconds. Yep.
And hostile conditions as we get ready to go to the planet Mars. And when we go to Mars, we're going to continue this search of understanding who we are, where we came from, and what was before us, and may be foretelling of what is the future. I think establishing colonies on adverse
and this boils down to that's the only one I can find right now, but there was other videos as well too, where he talks about, and specifically I have done his impersonation multiple times, where he goes, our origins story. And that kind of like the main thing, which I think is curious. I'm not saying it's aliens. I'm not saying it's this. I'm just wondering, why is the guy from NASA saying that on live television when nobody has seen this before? And I'm like, you wonder why there's people that are thinking that, we're being lied to. I'm like, you can't, what is that? A push for funding? I think it's funding stuff. It just makes me curious as an individual person, with why that would even be on TV unless it was a movie.
Yeah, I think he's just, and it's just my opinion, he's maybe trying to connect it to the bigger picture, by how do we learn the age of the Earth? It's not by studying the Earth; it's by studying meteorites that have landed on the Earth, because they, the Earth is too violent. It has plate tectonics. It melts things. We really don't have any 4.5 billion year old rocks on the Earth, so. We looked to the meteors to establish that. So maybe Bill Nelson is saying that by exploring the solar system, we can find out how the whole solar system, including Earth, came to be. So maybe that's the angle he's going off on. Well, I'll have to look at that further to see if he's.
I'd love to have you back on, David. I'd love to have you back on, Dave. This was a perfect conversation. I really appreciate you giving me your time as well too. We went past an hour, man, but if you want to, I'm going to link everything that you have in the description for everyone to be able to click. Is there any links that offhand that people can find you, be able to contact you and see some of your work as well too?
So I've got articles about the Roswell Incident and the Socorro Incident and Aztec, as well as 9/11 truthers and the chemtrails and creation and evolution. At my website, New Mexicans for Science and Reason, nmsr.org. And we have a YouTube channel, and we've been having Zoom meetings with the pandemic. So we're hoping to meet in person again sometime soon. But those are all on the YouTube. So our channel is the NMSR, 7 letters. And Mick West was one of our speakers, gave a bang up presentation on the new UAP stuff. And so our presentation earlier this week, we got one from Dr. Pace Van Devender, who is working on, you mentioned the ball lightning, and he's actually got an explanation he's working on to explain ball lightning and dark matter within the current standard model using quarks, but aggregations of quarks called magnetic quark nuggets, which would be incredibly dense, incredibly magnetic particles, which he thinks could explain dark matter and why there is matter that we can't see. But it could also explain phenomena like ball lightning. So, but that one, he said he had some papers that he's getting published. So he gave us the scoop, but we can't put that on the YouTube until he publishes his paper in a couple months. So that one, you'll just have to wait to see. But we've got all many other fun topics. Ben Radford, you might want to talk to him someday. He's written books on how to perform skeptical investigations, and his latest book is...
You'll have to put in a good word for me so I can get him on the show.
Too big to be true, but he's a fun speaker. He'll give you a good show.
But I'll link everything, all your links and everything in the description for people to be able to find as well too.
Yeah, nmsr.org to get you started. But we got the Roswell and
all the fun topics.
Many topics.
Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for our next episode.